The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to our July 2018 Expertise in Business webinar series. I'm Eric Hobbs, President of Technology Associates, and as usual, I'll be your moderator for today. So today's topic is the growth trap, how to shift from working in your business to working on your business with Will Barfield. But first, some housekeeping. If you have any questions during the presentation, enter them into the chat box and I will moderate those and forward them to Will. Our next webinar is going to be on Tuesday, August the 14th with Cindy Anderson. And Cindy and I will be discussing special challenges faced by women business owners. Take a look at technologyassociates.net/registration or /webinars for more information on those upcoming webinars. So today, I'm joined this month by Will Barfield, who's President and CEO of Barfield Revenue Consulting, BRC. It's a company he co-founded in 2017 with his wife, Amy. And Will has been in sales his entire professional career from the early 90s as a part-time telemarketer to over 12 years in sales leadership and sales recruiting with Frankel Staffing Partners, which is where I had the fortune to meet Will. So in addition to heading all sales-related efforts at BRC, Will is also very active in the local community. He donates his time to several organizations and has a history of leading successful fundraising efforts. At present, Will holds prominent volunteer positions with the Greater Raleigh Chamber of Commerce, the Raleigh Wake Human Resources Management Association, the Wake Med Foundation, and Haven House Services. So with that, I will turn it over to Will. Will, take it away.
Thank you very much, Eric. That's a wonderful introduction. I am excited and thrilled and flattered to be here today to lead this webinar and to talk about the growth trap and how to go from working in your business to on it. I am, as you mentioned, 13 months into owning my own company after being an employee for what was 19 years. And what is revenue consulting? Just so everyone understands, my business is about talent placement in sales, marketing, and success and retention, really. So all sides of the revenue stream, as it were. And then I do sales training, sales coaching, and some other sales consulting things around that, mostly in the small business arena. And to your point with the slide move that you made there, full disclosure to everyone on this webinar listening to me now, I'm talking to you about this growth trap today, not because I've solved it, but full disclosure is I'm living and learning this too. So this is more of a casual conversation around things that I'm, learning and trying and covering and choosing to share with others, and hopefully there's some similarities between things that I've experienced and things that Eric and I will kind of back and forth, and some experiences that others are having. It's the reason that they logged in today, and maybe we can all kind of gain something from it. But this is not a guy who's figured it all out and is espousing that to others. This is really kind of a, hey, you know what, like I just fell down and scraped my knee and here's what I did about it, and maybe we can all learn from that. So just glad that you asked me to do this today, Eric. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who is listening in. So why did you start your business, and what is your goal? I asked myself that question, why did I start my business? And there were really, three key factors for me on why I decided to start my own business. One was that there was a wonderful market opportunity. I had been working for Frankel Staffing Partners for 12 and a half years as their head of sales. So I was their lead production person for new business in the local market. I was going out and finding companies that would let us work on their jobs. I would bring those jobs back to the office, meet with the recruiting team, turn those jobs over to the recruiters, and they would fill them. I was the sales manager for my entire career there, so I had a team of anywhere from 1 to 4 people at any given point in time reporting to me. So I was a selling manager. But inside like my first 12 or so months on the job, an opportunity to start working on sales recruiting positions evolved. And I was out gathering up administrative jobs and scientific jobs and accounting jobs and the type of things that were our bread and butter. But there were a ton of sales positions that started to present themselves to me because of the folks I was meeting with, a lot of startup tech companies in downtown Raleigh and downtown Durham, some local small businesses that were really struggling to hire outside sales reps. And so I gathered those jobs up and brought them back to the office, and ultimately ownership was not certain that we were the right fit to fill those jobs. We didn't have a full-time sales recruiter, and we didn't really have a candidate pipeline. So I just kind of raised my hand and said, can I try? And they let me figure it out. They let me try to train myself to recruit. They let me work on my own jobs and keep them and fill them. And basically, inside the agency for the next 12 years, I built and ran an independent sales recruiting practice that, kind of was part of Frankel's overall model, but was my own thing. So as I did that over the last couple of years, market opportunities started to evolve with some of these fast growing companies and some relationships that I built, some asks that people had for consulting and other things. And I saw a window there where I could step through and take what I had been doing inside of Frankel, incubating it, and bring it outside and add some features and facets to it. So market opportunity led me to that. The freedom to call my own shots. That's one of the reasons I started my own business. I had worked for wonderful employers for my career. I always worked in small business, worked for the Carolina Mudcats for 6 years and reported to Steve Bryant, Joe Kramer, and, worked for Frankel Staffing Partners and reported to Rod and Lee Frankel. But there were some things, particularly as I was growing this sales recruiting practice, that were some unique approaches I wanted to take to what we were doing and the way we were staffing that were not your normal traditional staffing agency model type things. And so in order to really do some of that and to do the coaching and consulting and training, which is definitely not part of the traditional staffing agency model, I was going to have to step out on my own if I wanted to call my own shots. And quite frankly, just being open and honest, there was a life-changing event that happened to me in the year prior to me announcing my independence. My father passed away, and when life-changing events happen, we always kind of analyze and evaluate, what's going on and where we are and where we want to go. And his passing and the opportunity to start a company. My dad was in sales for his career. I had become a career salesperson. And so the opportunity to start a business and put our last name on there was something I couldn't pass up. So those were kind of the reasons I started it. If you were to break it down into three main things, what was my goal? My goals were to serve what was an underserved business need. I had really, over the last 12 years, found a niche where there wasn't a lot of competition, and there wasn't anyone who had done sales recruiting from entry level to VP as consistently as I had over the span of a dozen years. So I saw an unmet need in the market and, found product market fit, right? And went ahead and went for it. I wanted to provide for my family. I wanted to provide for my family in a way that was greater than I could do as an employee. Not that I wasn't, incredibly well taken care of at Frankel, but there are some things as a small business owner that I was learning, talking to others about, income and setting it up as an LLC, filing as an S corp, and some of the retirement things I could create and do. And I knew I could provide more for my family, short term and long term, if I could make the business successful, and then have fun. Like there's what I do every day. Every aspect of what I do every day is fun for me. I'm a salesperson. I've been a sales leader. I've hired, trained, and occasionally fired my own people. I've been recruiting sales people and sales leaders for a dozen years, and I get to do that kind of stuff all day long. And so, that was a goal for why I started. Those are really the three main goals that I'm hoping for starting a business.
And a lot of people who run their own business, kind of same scenario, same story, same for me. I was working for my employer and thought I could do it better on my own, and was lucky enough to have them as a client for a couple of years. And right, that's a very common approach to going out on your own.
Yeah, I was very fortunate when I separated from Frankel. It was incredibly amicable. Part of that is because they're wonderful people, but their primary ask as I stepped away, and they said, hey, take the business and, go succeed. They said, our only ask is that we can be a client. So I was just over there last week. They've hired a couple of new salespeople, and I did a sales training program for them. Who better to train their salespeople than the guy that built their, sales engine over the past dozen years? So I went back in there and basically shared all that wisdom with their two new reps.
Right, but as you find out pretty early, there's the all of the fun things you like to do. There's a lot more behind the scenes that has to be done, right? And some of that isn't too fun.
No, correct. So, questions that I ask myself here as I, started the business and I'm trying to run it successfully. What am I best at? And what do I enjoy most? And, how do those two things overlay? And I'm very good at bringing in new business. Over the course of 19 years, I have consistently been able to be in a small business setting, work our local market, and grow revenue every year, whether I was an individual contributor or leader of a team. Myself and my reps, we've always had an advancement year, with the exception of kind of the 01 and 09 blips. But other than that, I've been on a growth trajectory. I know how to bring in revenue. And I knew that because I'm good at bringing in business, I probably would not struggle with bringing in new clients because I sell for a living. I'm really good at building a brand, not in a traditional marketing sense. I'm not a marketer by any stretch of the imagination. That's not where my training comes from. But you mentioned my not-for-profit, right, and local community involvement stuff. 2017, I led the $1.6 million fundraising campaign for the Raleigh Chamber. Here in 2018, I'll be leading the $2 million fundraising campaign for the Wake and Med Foundation. Before I led the Raleigh Chamber campaign, I've raised $1 million for the UNC Lineberger Comprehensive Cancer Center. And, I'm the president of the Raleigh Wake Human Resources Management Association, which is our state's biggest SHRM chapter. I've traveled around the state and around the country for that responsibility over the last year. I'm on the board of Haven House Services and help them with fundraising consulting. I sit on the advisory board for Innovate Raleigh, involved in some other things. I've tried to make sure that I not only was present, and not only a contributing volunteer, but was also ascending in each of the things that I did, because I knew that if I built that personal credibility, that would help build my brand. I knew that there was good business in building that brand that way, Eric, because if those people see you working hard as a volunteer for free, they're certainly going to think, hey, I wonder how much that guy will give me. I wonder how hard he'll work if I'm paying him. And so when you are in a fundraising role or a leadership role or at the executive committee and you're sitting around a table with other executives and business owners and they're watching you work, they are much, much more inclined to want to do business with you and to believe in your brand if they see, that you are successful in other aspects of the community support. So that's kind of my brand building exercise. I'm good at motivating other people. I didn't raise this money for these causes by myself. I did raise money and I did my own efforts to that end, but I had teams, right? We had volunteer groups, and I needed the contribution of anywhere from 20 to 120 other people to help accomplish these goals, and that was just volunteer leadership. As I told you, I've got a history of generating increased revenue year over year for the companies I've worked for. And that was because we had, sales teams, and I had reps that worked for me and that, grew and followed the training and helped us advance things. So I know I'm good at motivating others. What do I enjoy most? Very fortunately, I enjoy all those things. I enjoy selling and bringing in new business. It's in the DNA. I enjoy all the volunteer work that I do. I love being out in the community, the goodwill of helping others and just being a resource, being a guy that people come to for, one thing or another, and ask you to step in and help them with a cause. I get great motivation from that, and I love motivating other people. And I think that to be a sales leader for 18 years, you've really got to be excited about developing others and to like leading and motivating and getting them fired up. So those things work well, and all that feeds my business very naturally.
Yeah, but coming from your background, and I think it was maybe a little bit of an advantage because you came from the sales background, and when you're doing your own business, and we talk about getting out of working on it and not in it, sales and keeping a focus on driving revenue was a big chunk of that, right? So when I started, I was very technically focused, and I thought if I just install servers a little better, then I'll get all this business, right? And that's a wake up call for a lot of people. So but again, it's identifying those things that you really like to do, but also on the flip side of it is knowing that there's a lot of crap that you don't want to do, and make sure that you can get that on somebody else's plate, right?
Yes, sir. And a lot of the folks that I consult with that are small business owners are people who were in that spot that you were, right? They may be very technically sound, but not a natural salesperson. And so how I have this great skill, I have some customers who love me. How do I take that and build a business, right? And many of those folks I'm consulting with, we're talking about, I have this great product. How do I make sure that the market really wants it? Or I have this great product and I know the market wants it. How do I get it out to more people? And those are sales related things that I will help small business owners with, as long as they understand what it is that they do best and what they enjoy, and then taking that and deciding, okay, this is what I do best. This is what I enjoy. This is what I can teach other people to do. This is how I can start to delegate. And this is what only I can do. And so I need to keep my focus there. So again, as a guy who was 13 months into owning his own business and was an employee for 19, I'm still learning as I go. But one of the things that my wife and I started to discover as we, settled into the first several months of the business was, number one, I had the great fortune, as we've already discussed, of stepping out of my former employer and taking my book with me, right? I mean, that doesn't happen that often. That was marvelous. So I stepped into a situation where I had revenue and run rate, and I knew about how long it was going to go, and I could plan based off of that. So there's some relief and some comfort that goes with having that net there in a way. But as business started to pick up, and as it started to get stretched beyond what I could satisfy, we started talking about hiring. And we started talking about, okay, here's what I do well, here's what I can do, and here's what generates revenue, and here's what doesn't. And in my world, when I'm talking to a company about helping them with their hiring, I'm making money, right? I'm very close to the revenue. When I'm talking to a candidate about a job fit that I understand very well, I'm making revenue. I'm uncovering talent, right? That's the other side. But when let's say I find Eric and he's perfect and I submit him for a job, the coordination of all the rest of the steps between the job submission and the offer that goes to Eric, 1, 2, 3, 4 interviews, follow up and feedback, chasing down Eric and chasing down the hiring manager, chasing down the HR person and coordinating all those things. I wasn't making any money in there. And that busy work was taking up a tremendous amount of time. And it was keeping me from doing the things that I knew would generate revenue, which was talking to prospects and talking to candidates, because I was so busy during the day coordinating interviews because business was picking up and I had a lot of work to do. That was one thing I isolated very early on that I could teach someone else to do. And so I knew that I could teach someone to schedule, to communicate, and to run that process for me. And so my first hire, 3 months after my wife and I began this conversation about what is it that we need to start delegating, what is it that we can pass down, was a recruiting coordinator who is handling all the scheduling for me, everything from first candidate email through to the offer letter, and then I'll come in kind of at that point if I need to and handle the negotiation and close it up. But that's something that I knew early on that was a bottleneck, that I was strangling the growth of the company because I was not delegating that. And it wasn't about an unwillingness or lack of trust. It was about just finding the time to find a person to then get them trained and get them up and running. And that was about a 90-day process.
But that's so common. I mean, small business owners get mired in that. You're at a point where maybe you're not making enough revenue to go out and hire a bunch of people. You feel like you have to get it all done yourself.
Yes.
And then there's the trust factor also. Am I going to entrust my customer that I've worked so hard to get to someone? That is a hard thing. But the quicker you can identify those high activity / low value things and proceduralize, delegate, get them off your plate, the quicker you can get back to the real task. And something I have hanging over my desk, and everybody should, it's, is what you're doing right now the duties of a CEO, something only you can handle, or advancing you towards your quarterly action items. If it's not one of those couple of things, of key things, then it's not worth, you got to get that off your plate, right?
You do. And, you also, just like I sent my 16-year-old teenage daughter off in the car and gave her the independence and, let her drive and just trusted that it was going to be okay. I also knew, it's probably not going to go as well as if I was driving her around. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And she was, ultimately rear-ended and totaled that car and got a new one, and that wasn't her fault, but things will happen. I watch email traffic of my employees now, and I see the way they communicate, and I read them, and someone's like, you know what? I wouldn't have said that. And that's not gonna exactly how I would have handled it, and it's not exactly what I want. When my client reads that, it's not exactly what I want them to read. It's not there, and the feeling that they may emote as a result of reading that communication. It's not exactly the feeling I want them to have at the time. But I can't own every communication. Number one, because I only have so much bandwidth. Number two, if I won't release it, if I keep squeezing it, I mean, it's going to die. So I have to let it grow, which means there's going to be some errors made. And those are correctable, teachable moments, right? What can you teach others to do? You teach them to be better based on, hey, here's what I would have said. And can you see how that might come across better? Can you work on your tone for me? And blah, 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 right? So I know as I examine my next hire, right? And that my next hire was in April. So I brought my first hire on in February, which was 6, 7, 8 months in. And then 10 months in, I hired a recruiter because I knew that I could teach someone to recruit, particularly if they had a background in recruiting. I could teach them to do our kind of recruiting and screen those folks and get them ready to submit to clients, and start to either give away ownership of certain books of business of mine so that that person could run it, or to give away layers of work that were kind of rinse and repeat, very process oriented kind of recruit and screen stuff, that my time would be better spent going after more tactical and strategic things like the high potential clients and the top end talent and the brand expansion. I needed to be doing those things and delegating down to others the tasks that are by no means menial, but that are trainable, teachable, and repeatable.
Yep.
So, to that end, right? Are you hiring great talent when you encounter it? Or are you hiring to a need only when that need is painful? I would say, quite honestly, with my first hire with Jessica, my recruiting coordinator, it was painful. I knew it was coming. I started working on it before the pain got too bad, but it was definitely a pain reaction. The part of it was getting my wife ready for the idea of having an employee, which, she wasn't altogether ready for us to start a new business, let alone, start hiring people. So part of getting her there was and extended the process. But I knew that I had that need, and I planned for it. And I reached out to some friends of mine who were in the business and said, hey, if you guys know of any good recruiting coordinators, particularly someone who wants to work part-time from home, let me know. I'm looking for somebody that's been in the business, it looks to work about 20 hours a week, and can work from home and have plenty of flexibility. And one of my friends referred me to Jessica. She had been working for him in an IT staffing shop as a recruiting coordinator, and was great, was running the office, had a baby, did not want to go back to work full time, and really wanted to work from home because she was planning on having more children. And he introduced me to her. She was excellent. It was a little bit ahead of when Amy and I were planning on committing to the budget, but when we met her, we knew we had to snap her up, right? Because there's a win, having been in the recruiting business for as long as I've been in, right? And basically being in hiring mode 365 days a year. I've watched it happen where either the company that I worked for or the clients that we were serving didn't pull the trigger when that little tiny window opened up and great talent was coming by. You're going to know an A when you see it. I mean, if you running a business and you're a successful business owner and you're good at what you do, and when you encounter somebody else who's good in your same space, an A. And you got to, pull a trigger if at all possible when you see that A, and go ahead and hire that great talent when you encounter it. And sometimes it may be ahead of when you plan to spend it. And sometimes it may be ahead of, I only have one headcount open, but there's two great people. One of my clients right now was hiring some enterprise sales reps to sell software, healthcare software as a service. And they had two great candidates that they loved, one from me and one that they found on their own that was a direct applicant. They had one opening. They hired them both because they knew, hey, you know what? Like this may not happen again. These are two great people. Rather than lose one, let's bring them both on. And instead of that hire we had budgeted for in 6 months, let's just take it on now and absorb it. So thankfully they were in the position to do that, but you've got to hire great talent when you encounter it, or you're not going to be able to delegate down and pass along those things. When I was resigning from Franklin, we were separating and kind of breaking up, and again it was incredibly amicable. One of the things that they said to me was that they had not given me the latitude or the budget to hire excellent people. I had management responsibility, but I didn't always have hire fire over the reps that were on my team. And I certainly had some excellent people that worked for me through the years, but we tended to go to the grocery store with a little bit less money than we needed. And I could window shop for the top of the line salespeople, but didn't have the buying power always to get what we needed.
But it's so seductive, right? It's so seductive to try to do that.
Yeah, and what I experienced as a guy hiring, training, and developing those people, and what I've watched happen as a guy who helps clients and advises them not to do that, or comes in and cleans up after that, is that if you hire someone who is what you can think you can afford, or you're hiring to a painful need but not thinking bigger or beyond that, then ultimately it ends up being a more expensive enterprise sometimes to clean up that mess than if you had just gone ahead and hired the great talent when it was coming by.
And so you kind of cheated, right? So you got half a person, right? So you got a quality person, but only half their time. And to me, that's like a perfect ramp up. And if you can't do that, and if you can't afford the right person, look at outsourcing it or finding somebody who can get it done for you. But it sounds like what you did was kind of best of all worlds.
Yeah, very fortunate again. But what Amy and I decided to do was, let's see if a halftime person who's really excellent, let's see how much load that takes off of you. How much does that free you up? It was kind of a compromise for her for commitment of cash flow. And there is a unbelievable resource of talent out there for, working mothers who were excellent at what they did and chose to have children and are looking to re-enter the workforce, either 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years removed. And if it works for your business and you can find a way to employ folks like that and give them work-life flexibility, they can crank. And I've just been really, really fortunate that I've tapped into that with a couple of hires. So that I tried to make sure that I hire graded talent when I encountered it. I did that with Jessica, and she in turn helped me with hiring another recruiting coordinator who has come on as a part-timer. Jessica's pregnant. She's going to be having another son, and she's going to be out really August, September, October. There was a lady that she worked with at her former employer who was a peer, who was great, who was at the same stage of life. And Jessica had mentioned to her how happy she was with her work. She said, oh, I'd like to be that happy too. We interviewed her, liked her, hired her 2 months ahead of Jessica's expected due date, because I wanted her to have 2 months to run alongside Jessica and just be copied on everything and learn and absorb. And then that way, when Jessica goes out, Hannah can step in and run everything smoothly. And as opposed to Jessica, whose maximum allowable hours is 20, Hannah can expand to 40. So she's working 20 right now. She'll step in and run the 40 hours in Jessica's absence to cover our load really at this point, which is that much. And then when Jessica comes back in 3 months, she's got a spot. And because at the rate that the business is growing, I'm projecting I can carry them both. Then I can keep Hannah full-time and Jessica part-time. And now I've got somebody who's 40 hours, someone who's 20, and I got 60 hours of recruiting support. And I project that the business will support that. And I will, have essentially had Jessica train Hannah on how to run everything, and then Hannah will run it in her absence. And then I'll have, 2 really strong people when Jessica returns.
But to your point, and I think, always hiring great talent, versus when it becomes super painful. And it's the opposite side of sales, right? And business development. And you can't, and look, we did it for the first 10 years, we didn't worry about sales. And the next 10 years, we didn't worry about hiring people. But now we've got both of them in alignment. And that's a big part of working on that business, is making sure those two are in balance, and
Yes.
always be looking to add awesome customers, and always be looking to add awesome people, especially in today's market with our essentially negative employment rate, right? I mean, these people are
Yes.
not, banging on knocking on our doors the way they were, 10 years ago.
No, the best hires are passive candidates.
And if you're waiting until you need someone, either from a growth perspective or when somebody leaves, what, 3 months, maybe, if you're lucky?
Oh yeah. Yes, it is a process. And if you wait to that point and it's painful, then it's gonna hurt more for a while before you.
And it assumes that hire months out sticks and stays, right?
Exactly. So, to that point, are you paying market price? Are you paying just enough to get a good enough hire in the door? I mentioned that example in the last slide about, my experience with Rod and Lee and, what they gave me to go shopping with. And I asked Jessica, what she, was looking for ideally. And then I said, that's great. And I gave her more. Part of it was I had the budget to do that. I didn't give her astronomically more, but I wanted to show her that we were committed, and I wanted to be really sticky, right? I wanted her to say, wow, like, these people are committed to me. They're committed to this position. This business is solvent, sound, and I can bet on them. So with my hire that I made, the recruiter hire in April, Her name is Lauren. She was working for a friend of mine. His company was a software as a service. They had just been acquired. There was a hiring freeze. It was going to be at least 60 days. She went from recruiting for several positions to recruiting on none. He did not know how long it would be before there would be more recruiting work to do. She was not a full desk HR person. She just wanted to do recruiting. And I have been meeting with him. He's a CEO. He has, been very successful. He's exited more than one company. He's been a great advisor to me. We'll get to that on a later slide. But we were talking, and I said, I really need to hire a recruiter in the next 3 months. And he said, well, how about now? And I said, I don't know that I'm ready for that. And he said, well, you need to be, because Lauren is getting ready to go somewhere else, and I'd rather her go to you than anybody else. I think you'd really develop her. I think she'd be really happy working for you. So Doug forced coffee on me with Lauren, and it went really well. And then she met my wife, and that went really well. And then we offered her the job, and then she let us know that Cree was involved and was offering her a very big corporate role and a talent acquisition seat. And they get all kinds of bells and whistles I don't have, right? I'm just, me and my wife and one part-time employee that's a working mother. And then, hey, why don't you bet on us as opposed to Cree, which is this big machine. Stability, a lot more muscle than me. And ultimately, she wanted the entrepreneurial experience. She wanted to do all the variety of things that my job was going to allow. It cost me more than I expected, because I had to go, not only was I paying a little bit above market to get her, because I was going to give her more money than she made at Transload, but I had to go above the Cree bid in order to get her to come aboard, because there were some things that were bundled up in that Cree offer that I didn't have the capacity to provide to her at 8-9 months in. So I paid more than market price, and I got an excellent hire in the door. The week before I hired her, I landed a big account. It was a type of business that I was unfamiliar with, that we had not done before. And if I was going to take that on, it wasn't going to be able to be me. I didn't have the bandwidth for it, and it was not something that I had done before. It was in the vein. It was a type of sales that we just had to staff, so I had no pipeline for it. And I went ahead and took the business because I knew I was hiring a great person, that I had paid more than market price for her, and she had the capacity to take that work on. And in her first week, that became her client. So we'll get to that a little bit on that on the next slide too. But it is very important, and I'm sure you've lived through this, Eric, that you get what you pay for, right? Cliche. But if you hire great talent and you spend a little bit more than you plan to get it, in my experience, I've never not seen that talent pay off in a way where I ended up either not at least even, if not better overall financially, because I invested in the right human beings.
So here's a question that's come up, and it's probably a longer question. We'll probably do a whole webinar on this. How do you know you're paying enough or to get, versus good enough? How do you know you're paying to get that extra talent, especially given the clampdown on finding out salary histories during the interview process?
That's a great question. So number one, as you mentioned, we're at like this negative unemployment, right, which is completely unhealthy. And when you're in a low,
I know it's giving me heartburn.
yeah, and me too, right? So just because I did it and it succeeded doesn't mean it still doesn't hurt when I process payroll every month. But it's a good hurt. The first lever people pull, either the candidates or the companies that are trying to hire great candidates, the first lever pulled in a tight market where unemployment is very low is salary, right? So that's the first place you're going to see change. And take this, from a guy who's been in recruiting for 14 years, that's the first card somebody plays out of the deck. More money, right? More money to stay. Oh my gosh, you got another offer here. Here's a counter. Or more money to go. You can't match this offer. I'm heading over there. So how do you know what market price is for someone? Well, and there's salary surveys that you can get online that are free. They're not terribly, robust or detailed. There's organizations like CAI. I mean, if you can join CAI, Capital Associated Industries, which is a membership organization for companies in North Carolina, across the state, that's a human resources advisory outfit, and they're a not-for-profit, and they provide salary survey information. They charge for that, and for a good salary survey, you're going to typically pay. I had the benefit of being in the market and talking compensation all the time with candidates. So I almost always know in just about every discipline what market price is when you are the person doing the recruiting, and you don't do it that often, and you're not dealing with a recruiter. It is very hard to understand or know what market price is or how to ascertain that number, because what you shouldn't say is, well, what are you making now, right? Legally in the state of North Carolina, we're not at a point yet where that is a violation, but it is in New York and California and other states, and it's coming our way, and it really is kind of a faux pas. What I try to ask is not what are you making, but I ask a candidate, Eric, listen, I know you're kind of passively looking around. You're not going to make a move for same money. So what do you need to make? What are you hoping to make with this move? Where would you like to see your compensation go? So I will ask Eric. Eric will tell me kind of what he wants to make at his new position. And then I'll be able to say, well, our role here or my client's position pays X. And if there's a gap that's a chasm, then that's probably Eric's probably not the right candidate. But if there's a gap that's small, then I can talk to Eric and talk to the client about, how we make up, maybe bridge that, or you come halfway and we'll come halfway, and let's find a number that works. It's never bad practice to reach out to a staffing agency or a recruiting firm and make them aware of a search process that you are underway with. And here's why. Here's kind of a cheat sheet. So in the staffing business, 99 times out of 100, a staffing agency or a local recruiting firm is a contingent arrangement. That staffer, that recruiting firm, does not get paid until they fill the job. So if they work on it and don't fill it, they don't get paid. And a lot of times when I was at Frankel and now in my business today, I'm either A, not the only game in town, there's other recruiters involved, or B, I'm competing with internal recruiting, and oftentimes C, they've got an employee referral program I'm competing with too. So I know going into every engagement, I'm paid for performance. I'm paid when the job gets filled, but not until. So when the client and I are talking about the job description and the compensation, I'm inevitably, as a recruiter, going to advise that person and say, that based on what you're looking for, trying to hire a project manager for $50,000 for this level role really isn't going to work. Market's really about 60, 65. So do you have the ability to get some budget from somewhere else? Do you want to pull some things out of this job description? How do we, get close to a more harmonious place with comp and expectations? So you can oftentimes glean that from a recruiter, or if you've got a connection, someone who's in town acquisition or recruiting at a local company, they're gonna know, or a human resources professional, those folks are gonna know market. And if you got a buddy you can shoot an email to and say, hey, I'm looking to hire X, what is the going rate for something like that? You can oftentimes get that information from your connection. I would definitely go that route, reaching out to a recruiter I know, reaching out to a human resource professional I know, or even engaging a contingent staffing agency before I make the mistake of asking the wrong question of an employee. That's a long answer. But that's not an easy situation to navigate. And so many of my small business clients who are not HR savvy will not only ask that question the wrong way, but a lot of others. So you got to be careful. And you say that you ask the wrong question to the wrong person who's, got the wrong motivations, and it can be trouble. Are you delegating and entrusting, or are you still owning and or approving everything, right? So I mentioned with the hire of Lauren that I landed that new client, and that the first thing I did with her was on the first day on the job, put on a conference call, myself, the CEO of this brand new client that I just brought in, and Lauren, And I said, hey, Chad, this is Will Barfield and Lauren on the call. She is my new talent acquisition partner. This is going to be her account, and she's going to handle everything for you, soup to nuts, from sourcing to screening to getting some folks on board. And she's going to lead this call. And, thank you so much for your time. Lauren, let's go, right? And number one, I knew when I hired her, she was an A, and I knew put in that scenario what she would do. B, I prepped her that was going to happen. But C, I immediately delegated to her and entrusted in her the ability to run that process and manage it and be successful. And she jumped right in. She took it. She was super excited about being able to own something brand new. As soon as she, took the position, she crushed that phone call with Chad. She's filled a couple of his jobs already. We have several more we're working on. And I don't have, aside from being CC'd on some of the communication, I have zero involvement in that account. I don't touch it. She runs it. I don't have to be involved in the negotiations. I set the parameters on the fees and everything. That just runs, and she does the work. And that new part-time recruiting coordinator that I hired, who's training under Jessica, is also 100% dedicated to Lauren. So she actually has her own recruiting coordinator. So she's really freed up to just, run that account for me. I've given her some other things, and I've entrusted in her the ability to run it. She knows when to come to me when something is new, challenging, different, or just feels like it's at an alarm level where I need to know. She'll come to me. Other than that, she knows that she's got the latitude and the trust to go with it, because I hired somebody at the level that they were ready to step in and do that.
And that's critical, right? Because as you start to add and scale and add more people, one of two things: either you're teaching them to trust their own judgment, teaching them a process, and teaching them that you trust to make those decisions, even if they eventually make mistakes, or alternately, you're teaching them to bring you every single problem and leave it on your desk. And if you do that, you are up the creek. And trust me, I've been there.
Yeah. Well, and you're creating more work for yourself, because not only do you now have to, do what you do to keep the business going, but now you also have to micromanage these people that you've trained essentially to rely on you for everything. So have you really expanded your bandwidth? And the answer is no. You haven't. And I had a client issue pop up recently where it was a miscommunication, and it burst into a quick flame and then was settled down and taken care of. Jessica, my recruiting coordinator, handled everything, and I didn't even know what had happened until after it. And she reported back to me and said, here's what happened. Here's what I did. Everything's good. It's clean. Here's the email history on how it went down, just so you can see it. So I had delegated and entrusted in her to handle those things. She felt like she could, and it would have been something that would have gotten me pretty upset and would have been a mess, and it would have knocked my day off track. But she crushed it, and I didn't have to worry about it. Are you always thinking business development, or are you buried in the weeds of existing client business while not seeing the future? And a lot of friends that I have that are small business owners that get really busy with one or two clients and get absorbed in managing what they have on the plate, will come out of those periods of heavy work and see on the horizon that there's nothing behind it, and then they go into scramble mode trying to find more. And what you really have to do is always be thinking business development and always be seeding the future instead of being tangled up in the weeds of today, right? So and business development, always thinking business development, doesn't mean that you're sitting down at your desk making cold calls every day. I mean, I don't do that anymore. I paid my dues there. But it's really about, am I doing something business development related every week? For myself and the way my business works, yes, I am. I'm out networking and, doing some of my volunteer leadership or going to events or whatever all the time. And I'm having conversations with business owners and local executives, and always just keeping my name and my face in front of people, and that's business development, right? I'm all the time looking at my book of business and my connections and people that I haven't worked with in a while, or people that are friends of mine that I'm surprised we're not working together yet. And I'm, shooting them notes and inviting them to coffee, right? And I do a couple of those a week too, at least. And because number one, I want to have that conversation with them so that they are really aware of what I do, because even your closest friends don't really truly understand what you do all the time. And they don't know how your business evolves. So it helps to get together and reconnect and say, hey, just so you know, like, here's what I'm doing. And updating them on that, because they aren't thinking about your business all the time. They're thinking about what they need to do. And it may be that they choose to do business with you then. It may be like, hey, this is a great time. I actually need what you do. Or it may be that in that 30-minute coffee, they think of someone else who's recently mentioned to them, hey, I'm really having trouble with X. And they're like, you need to connect with Eric because he mentioned to me recently to have trouble with X. I want to send an email introducing you to. I think you could be a great resource for him. That is a business development thing that would not have happened if you hadn't invested the 30 minutes in coffee.
Agreed, but I think it's part that it needs to be a routine, a regular process. And even if you spend 30 minutes, an hour a week, whatever you can spend, it's some dedicated time that you've blocked out to pick up the phone and do these things. You just can't wait until there's the need there.
No, and the lesson I learned, and that's a great point. The lesson I learned in staffing business was when I came from my prior job in baseball and I signed a contract, the deal was done in money exchange hands, and they bought the rights to put their logo on that fence sign. When I came to work in staffing and I signed a deal with Eric and I was going to help him hire people, and he's like, yep, we'll do that. That percentage works. Let's go. Here's your open position. As a salesperson, I had done my job. I was finished, and I just made no money, and the company had just made zero. Because I had to take those jobs, given to recruiting. Recruiting had to find the people, the right people, send them, have them interview well, have them get an offer, have them start, have them stay. So all those steps had to happen before money came back. So in order to get deals done in baseball or mapping over to staffing, I had to do 10x the amount of prospecting in the staffing business in order to see the same results, because there were so many things that could happen to interrupt the contract and the money. So I was trained to always front load and always be selling and always be prospecting and always be working ahead, because so many of the things that I brought in and I thought were going to be a done deal would fall apart. And you have to anticipate. I came in every Monday morning thinking, if I don't sell something new this week, we're not going to sell anything. And I had that attitude, and I still have that attitude today. If we don't bring in some more work this week, we're going to struggle. And eventually, through a coffee conversation or a phone call I didn't anticipate, or a referral, we not only feed the business, but we're bringing in more than we're losing, and we're in a great place. But to that end, being that busy, am I setting aside time to unplug, or are friends and family always staring at the top of my head? And that is something that I'm working on right now with my wife all the time. It is a process that we are tweaking daily and weekly. There are great things about running this business that it has provided for our lifestyle, and it's exciting to be independent business owners and to call our own shots and all that stuff. It's also very hard to get away from the business. And with smartphones and all these things nowadays and laptops, you can be mobile and flip on anywhere, and people are always working. I mean, I'll be 11 o'clock on a Sunday night and I got clients emailing me. So people are never off anymore, and it's very hard to unplug. And if much like you feel like you've got to touch everything, right, and you can't delegate, or you got to see everything or sign everything, you can't pass it off. A lot of times you feel like if you're not watching constantly the business, that's you're going to get a leak in the boat and it's going to sink. And it's all because I turned my head for 10 seconds. But if you don't do that, it's going to impact the relationships you have with your friend and your friends and your family. And you're going to all the things I'm trying to do to provide for a lifestyle for my family, for my wife and my kids, and the things I want to be able to do with my friends. None of that stuff will matter if I'm not unplugging and I'm damaging the relationships that are so critical to my day-to-day existence while I'm here as a human being. So date night, Wednesday, right? We've set that up. 6 o'clock, phone down, no look, right? No touch. It's date night. Sunday night, this past Sunday night, I decided, you know what? I'm not going to work. Put the phone away, put the laptop away. And my wife and I, went out and went to dinner and went somewhere, a wine store we had been looking to go to that was new, and had some wine and chatted, and then came home, watched television, and just did that, right? I unplugged, and that fed my soul and fed my marriage in a way that, she sees me working hard and she knows that's good for all of us. But if she wants my attention and my family wants to engage me, and they're looking at the top of my head because I'm not focusing on them, although they appreciate what I'm doing to provide for them, they really want my attention and I'm not giving it to them.
Yeah, that's important, because if you don't do that set aside time, you start to resent the business. You start to resent the time that you put into it. Speaking from experience.
Are you living the life that you wanted, or are you living for the business? Right? We were just talking about that a little bit on the last slide. I'm still living for the business and trying to live the life I want. So I haven't yet finished my hiring. I haven't yet finished my training. I haven't yet finished my business of getting out of the weeds. I'm still working some in and not as much on. I am creating some wealth for my family long term. I've created for myself the flexibility to do what I want and to call my own shots and to have the freedom that I'm looking for. And I get to do everything I want to do all day long, and I love my work. So in that way, I'm creating the life that I want, but I'm very much still tethered to the business because I'm not done hiring that talent when I find it. I'm not done with delegation and entrusting, and I'm not done spending money to make money. But I know all those things have to happen if I'm going to continue to work on getting out of being in it and working on it and doing some of the strategic stuff. Like right now, if I go on vacation, Eric, things just don't happen. There's stuff that relies 100% on me. And if I can get to the point, and I will, where I can go on vacation and walk away and the business runs, that's a great victory. The Franco staffing is where I was. Rod and Lee could leave the country for 2 weeks and the staff would carry things and it wouldn't miss a beat. Seeking help and working to improve. Are you doing that? Resources and advice are everywhere out there. Ask for help. That CEO friend of mine who advised me to go ahead and hire Lauren, he's part of my close circle of friends. I've got several different CEOs and mentors and coaches that I rely on, people I go to for advice. I'm interviewing some potential executive coaches because I know that there's a lot I don't know, and I'm not the smartest guy in the room, and I need outside perspective. The only person I talk to about business can't be my wife. That's too much pressure on me and on her.
Yeah. Learned that one. So yeah, and this one thing right here was the biggest turning point from my perspective, and that's finding other people who are in like or similar businesses, talking to other business owners about struggles you're having, because it allows you to see what's possible when in your mind sometimes you're relegated to the sandbox that you're living in. And unless you go over and visit some other sandboxes and hear what's going on with other business owners and how the achievements they're making and the struggles they're dealing with and how they're getting through it, that is the quickest and easiest way to leapfrog.
So much wisdom. And, I know that I don't know enough yet, and I can't teach myself everything. I've got to draw on others. So that is a realization that I had very early on. And even my former employer, they're great advisors to me. And then, to that end, of the last slide, sometimes you got to stop and forgive yourself too, right? You got to be patient. It is a process. As I said at the beginning of the webinar, I am living it. I've not accomplished it. And I have to sometimes stop and forgive myself and say, Will, you're 13 months in, just take a break, recognize what you've accomplished, pat yourself on the back, because your clients, your employees, maybe your family members are not going to cut you any slack. You have to do it for yourself.
And I'll tell you, this needs to be kind of part of that gut check process, right? And so what we do, what I've done for many, many years is just set aside some time once a quarter just to go back and look at your notes from the last quarter. What were the action items? What were the things you were dealing with? What are the things you decided you were going to get out of your life or add? And where are you, right? And having that quarterly rhythm, because for the first many, many years, it was write a business plan, stick it in the drawer, pull it out next December and refresh it. And you have to have that kind of shorter term rhythm to recognize that you are making progress in this business, and to give you, in any business, and to give you some focused time to, set your sights on the next little sprint, the next 3 months. And if you can see some of that progress, it's so much easier to forgive yourself when you're seeing a little bit of progress moving forward, right?
Yeah, I mean, my clients are not forgiving me right now. I mean, they know how the unemployment situation is. They know how hard it is to find talent. That's why they called me to find it. And yet they're saying, more. Where are my candidates? So they're not going to cut me any slack. My employees have entrusted their lives in me to provide a great, job for them and to support their families. I don't expect them to cut me slack. I ask them to bet on me. My family, although they understand that, I'm working really hard, they also, I have a wife and 3 daughters, so they are consuming really aggressively. So they're not going to cut me any slack. I've got to be patient. I've got to stop and forgive myself sometimes. And that little release of endorphins when I pat myself on the back and say, hey, you're doing great. Let's just celebrate what you just did today. It is a reward that, only you can give yourself sometimes.
All right, so a couple questions that have come in. Some of them I've been kind of sitting on, waiting for them to hatch. So first one, your recommendations on the best books about working on versus in your business. So what are your favorite books around this subject?
So I'm gonna answer that question honestly, and perhaps in a disappointing fashion. I have, to this point in my career, only really digested one book to that end, and I'm in the process of another go around with traction. I've got a couple of friends of mine that are EOS implementers, and they have been espousing that to me for a while. A couple of my clients have implemented EOS and are real big champions of it. There's a guy who's actually a referral partner of mine who he sends me business when his clients are looking to hire as they go through different parts of the EOS process. I can be part of, moving that rock, right? Moving the rock, for those of you who've studied EOS, is hiring someone. So I've not digested a ton of them, and to find the time to read that has not been easy. But, at this point, on a sample size of 1, I can tell you that I really enjoyed traction, but when I have more time to work on me, and I'm not just working in the business, doing some more reading around those types of things, I think will be a great help. But that has been, I'm not an EOS implementer, and I'm not necessarily a formula guy that thinks that when you study something that it is the solution to all. But there's a whole lot about that I've enjoyed and been able to map over to what I do for a living. Yeah.
So my answer, traction also, and I'll save you some time. When you do have some time to read other books, just read traction again.
Okay.
I've read them all. Yeah, and they just they're fun, but traction, rubber meets the roads. So and another question here, and we kind of come at this from 2 different directions. So when I started my business, faced many of the same struggles, but was really focused on operation, less on sales. You started your business, you always knew sales was there. It was a component from the beginning. I had to work hard in getting into networking and all that other stuff. So the question that came in was, what suggestions do you have for getting involved in networking, since it seems to have formed given you a head start when you formed your own business?
Right. So that's a great question, and I have a what I call a three-pronged approach to that. Number one prong was to join a chamber that makes sense for your business. So when I went to work for Franklin Staffing Partners, there wasn't a choice. Rod said, "We're involved in the chamber, you will be too." So he basically put his hand in my back and pushed me out the door and said, "Go do chamber stuff." But I did it, and it worked. You know, the key with a chamber is make sure that the chamber that you join has a constituency and a membership that is a good fit for your business, whether it's B2B focused or B2C focused. The Raleigh Chamber is a great B2B chamber. So joining is part of it, right? But joining and then just getting in the directory is not a win, right? It's just like joining the gym and then never going.
Or just showing up to the after hours.
Correct. You know, you get a Bud Light, you get some cheddar cheese cubes, and you meet 13 financial advisors.
Right.
And that's what's going to happen at the after hours. With the Raleigh Chamber, what I did was I sampled everything. I went to their morning AM networking coffee things, and I went to their business expo and their small business showcase and their HR forum, and tried all the different things and figured out, oh, okay, so this demographic here, the Young Professionals Network, is a really good fit for me. I'm going to go to that consistently, and I'm going to be there and show up and meet people and just keep going. I'm going to commit it to my calendar and make it a thing. And when I committed it to my calendar and made it a thing, and I got into it, then I met who the folks were that were running it, which is always a volunteer group. And I said, hey, how can I help? And they said, here's what you do. And we need you to run this task force. And then you do that, and then you're good at that. And they'll ask you to well, will you be the vice chair of this? And then will you be the chair of that? So
but you're hitting both sides of that coin with that one thing, right? I mean, you're meeting other people who can help mentor you and help you with those decisions. You're meeting other businesses and other people who may become customers. So you're meeting other people who may become employees or help you find good people. So you're rolling all that up in all these things that we talked about in just that one activity.
Right, and you're networking with a purpose. Don't just join and not go. Don't just go and not do, and don't just do and not ascend, right? It's a process. So that's one prong. Second prong, get involved in a local professional association that has the appropriate clientele to feed your business. For me, for many, 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 many years, it was the Raleigh Wake Human Resource Management Association, because I sold to HR. HR was a decision maker and trigger puller on what I did for a living. So rather than just sell to them, or call them, or walk in the front door and ask them for their business all the time, I joined their local association as a member, never ever sold at one of those meetings, never handed out a business card and said, hey, call me. I just went, attended, networked. I used the 2 ears and 1 mouth philosophy, which is listen more than you talk. And then when there was an opportunity to volunteer, I did the same thing there. Volunteered, then I got asked to lead, then got asked to run this, then did that really well, and now I'm the president of the organization. So that was a process, but I did it in a way where it got me in front of the end users that really were going to be excited about what I did for a living. And the third prong was finding a nonprofit that I was passionate about and getting involved in a fundraising capacity with them, particularly one that was of a size or scope where I knew they had either a fundraising committee or like a foundation board or something, because that's great networking. Because when you're a salesperson like I was, it's very hard to get Eric Hobbs to pick up the phone on a cold call. I'm going to sell to the CEO. It's probably smarter for me, rather than just trying to ram my way in, to figure out what's important to Eric, right? And if I go to a fundraising meeting at the American Heart Association, probably at that table are going to be some of the executives that I've been interested in meeting. And now when we're sitting at the table together, we're peers. We're both there because we're passionate about Heart Association, and we're fundraising together, and that caste system separating us is gone, and we're just two guys who are raising money for the same cause. And those folks inevitably, when they see me work, ask me, well, what do you do? I'm like, well, I recruit, salespeople. Oh, wow, we've been struggling to hire salespeople. I'll tell Susan, our HR person, to give you a call. So there was great benefit that came from raising money for a cause that I cared about, but it shortened my sales cycle when I got involved with Wake Med. So
Awesome.
really a three-pronged effort.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, listen, we've gone a little over. Will, I appreciate your time and your willingness to share kind of your experience and what works and what doesn't for you. So thank you so much. And to everybody out there, we'll be packaging this webinar up shortly and getting it back out with a recording and some notes. So check /webinars on our website for more information. So once again, Will, thank you so much, and everybody have an awesome day.
It's a pleasure. Thank you all.